Okay.
Perfect, and then you're good to go. See you in a bit.
Thank you. I'm trying. How do I toggle? Okay. Whoops. Hope I don't do that. Okay. Okay. Good morning, Group 1. Today we will be discussing differential reinforcement of low rates. And so on the agenda, we're going to start with a summary of the article, and then we're going to move right into an activity and some discussion questions and another activity, and then we will conclude. So I know you
Sorry to
all.
cut you off, Jody, but I can't see your screen at all. Like your slides.
Yeah, it's showing up blank.
It just says you're sharing your screen.
Oh, hold on a second. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to start again. Are you seeing it now?
Yep.
Are you seeing the agenda?
Yep.
Okay. So the agenda for today is the summary of the article, and then we have a DRL activity, followed by a discussion and another activity and our conclusion. Okay. So the summary of the article. The study examined the effectiveness of a full session differential reinforcements of low rates schedule in reducing excessive question asking behavior of two individuals with intellectual disabilities working at an adult day training center. The DRL schedule allowed for a significant reduction in question asking by both participants, and a moderate increase in task engagement was seen. Okay, so for our group activity, I'll be utilizing an interdependent group contingency to ensure that I get through the presentation on time. And so to participate in this group discussion, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom, or you can raise your hand and wait for me to identify you so that you can add to the discussion. If you use the raise hand feature and you wait for identification at least 4 times, you will receive a Tim Hortons gift card at the end of the presentation. So does everybody understand that? Yeah, okay. Okay, so the first discussion question was, what did you find most interesting about the article? Dana. So Dana can go first and then
Okay,
Caitlin.
so I think we see a lot of DRO and DRA when we're looking at general articles and readings that we see like in our classes. But we don't see a lot of like DRL, right? Like not aiming to eliminate the behavior entirely, but to shape it to occur at like socially acceptable, like socially appropriate rates rather. So I think that was really interesting to see. Also using like a full session DRL, like, reinforcement was provided only if participants asked fewer than 4 questions during the entire session. So it contrasts with like spaced responding, which reinforces longer intervals. So I think also seeing that applied in an adult day training center was interesting because it demonstrates how like low rate reinforcement schedules can be practical in real world settings as well. So I found that pretty interesting. And it's still like the entire study still maintained functional communication, what was like the entire point. So there was like higher rates of engagement as well.
Awesome. Caitlin? Caitlin, then Luna.
Yeah, so what I found really interesting was the fact that like this article is obviously about like DRL and everything, but it's also effectively like used to decrease like excessive question asking without entirely like eliminating the behavior itself. Like this is particularly like interesting to me, mainly because like question asking is always seen as like a positive like behavior and a positive being like, oh, like good job, you're doing this and ask questions. But when it's excessive in this article, it can also become like disruptive. And I like love how it highlights the more like behavioral like techniques that can be applied to like modify the behaviors like entirely and everything like that.
And not necessarily extinct the behavior, but just to modify it.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, Luna, then Karina, then Yurita.
What I found the most interesting was how, because they were testing two things, right? Like they were mainly testing to see if it would reduce the amount of like questions being asked, but they were also testing the task engagement as well. But I found it interesting how the questions asked that immediately like improved right away as soon as they implemented it. But the task engagement, like for one of them, it like kind of increased it, but then the other one, it like didn't really affect it at all. So I found it kind of interesting, like the difference in the two. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I found this something that I found interesting about this article was how the practical application of the article was, hold on, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes of the behavioral intervention, how it showed like a real world example in the workplace. I thought that was interesting, and just how they went about doing this and how they were able to increase the independence and how they were able to make the people in this more productive, and just how it was using simple strategies in the workplace, and how they made them more independent and how they became more productive after that. I thought that was interesting, and that was
I agree.
nice.
I agree with you, Karina. Yurita?
Well, I found it very interesting. I think something similar to what Karina just said. For me, it was very interesting to see what is it? Oh, yeah, I think it's very interesting the setting that they did it, that they used because it's and the population because even in the article it said like it has been used for children or when in school settings, but I found very interesting that they are actually doing it for adults and for a very specific setting that is the workplace, and they are training them so that they can insert in the work field more independently and more effectively. So yeah, that's what I found like very interesting about the
Yes.
art.
So that's what I found interesting too, Yurita. And as Karina had said, that it would improve their independence, and I found that this was like a very important skill. I feel like it was able to enhance their quality of life.
Mhm.
Definitely. All right, so we move on to our next slide. And it's the next question that says, Were there any ethical concerns of the study? How would you address these, if any? And we're gonna start off with Luna, and then Dania, and then Karina.
So the main, like, I guess ethical concern that I kind of had with it was what if, like, they used up their three questions and then they had, like, either a question that's, like, really important to the work they're doing or, like, even, like, an emergency situation, like if they're not feeling well or if, like, something happened to, like, another worker or something. Um, Either like I feel like they would get ignored by the person, like the staff, trying to like get their attention, or they might even feel like, oh, I've already used my three questions, so I can't ask this very important question. You know what I mean? So I feel like the best way to address that would either be like either allow them to like verbally like call out like, hey, I have an emergency over here, or even implement like a call button or a switch somewhere where it'll like make a sound or something or like stop the operation to like focus on that. Um,
I totally
yeah.
agree.
Hmm.
Like an emergency safe word or
Exactly, yeah.
something, right? Dana?
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree with you, Luna. Like a potential concern is the risk of inadvertently reducing appropriate communication if like the DRL is too restrictive, right? Because question asking is like a socially significant behavior, right? And limiting it too much could negatively impact the individual's ability to either seek information, engage with others, or even like self-advocacy, right? Like as we know in our placements, a lot of the times we have to wait for, especially like when it comes to children's, but even adults too, like anywhere we see, even like as such students, we struggle in like asking for help or asking questions. So we don't want to like minimize it so much, or we don't want a schedule that's so strict that they hold off on asking for something for
Expressing,
themselves,
yeah,
right?
expressing
Yeah,
something
so like it's one
important.
thing to ask for like information or like ask a question about a certain topic, but it's one thing if like they want to advocate for themselves. It should be either like a call button or like some kind of safe word, or for it to be like mentioned like beforehand. Like if you absolutely need to ask a question, like you're, like it's not gonna, like the world's not gonna explode, you know what I mean?
Right, I
So
totally agree
and
with that.
like yeah, but like while also like ensuring informed consent and assessing social validity regularly, particularly from the participants. It helps confirm that the intervention is enhancing rather than hindering the quality
Agree.
of their life.
Okay, thank you for that. Karina, you're next, and then Yurita, and then Caitlin.
Yeah, so I think similar to what Dania and Luna said, I agree with what you guys said when it came to the ethical concerns because they were only given three questions that they were able to answer. And I don't know, it made me think like if they were only given three questions, there's a chance that they could become like frustrated or angry or like they would just that would be inside them and they wouldn't or can't express that to the people that were in charge. So, like, how if they got frustrated with the people ignoring their questions, especially if it was important or if it was an emergency, like you guys said, like, I think that could potentially cause further frustration or anxiety for some people. And it could make them uncomfortable and like it wouldn't be helpful or good for their well-being or mental health. Like I don't know, I thought that could be a concern and just how they would be affected after that, especially being ignored after three questions. Like I don't know, that seems a bit harsh on them. So yeah.
Yes, I agree with basically with what you have guys said. And also I think it is a little bit maybe like disproportionate because in the work field, if that's what they want to achieve in the end, like actually go in the work field and work under a certain management, the fact that they are controlling in a way, like from the training, the asking questions behavior, it might actually like be counterproductive in the work field. Because if they have any questions, because of the type of work they are doing in the work field, they might not feel like they can actually ask because they will have like this frustrations or this understanding that they cannot do it. And so I think it's very interesting to actually see it more like in the real world.
So, Yurida, you're saying that basically it could be generalized into the and maintained further, and so be an inhibition in other settings.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
yeah, I
Exactly.
can see that. Caitlin, your point?
I mean, like everyone kind of like touched on what I was gonna say as well. That's the thing, because I think one of like the most obvious like ethical concerns is of course like only limiting to like 3 questions like per student, because with this can also cause behaviors within the students as well. That's the thing. Like it can lead to like them getting frustrated or like a lot of like decreased social like interaction, because at that point they're gonna be like, what's the point? If I raise my hand, I'm only gonna get ignored anyways. Kind of like that thought process.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. And like
Yeah.
some ways that I feel like you could maybe like address it is you could have like alternative means of like obtaining like information. So like encouraging participants to even like write stuff down or maybe use like visual aids. You could do that. Like that's entirely possible. But this also leads back to like, as I'm saying this, it's like, but you only have 3 questions. That's the thing. So it's like, even if you write it down, you're not sure if they're going to answer it, you know?
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
get that.
that's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I understand. I totally agree with all topics that you guys touched on. I share the same views. I'm going to move on to this discussion question 3. And it says, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of the treatment design? And I saw Dana hand went up first. Then we're gonna take Karina and then Caitlin.
So I think question asking is so prominent in like everyone's lives, right? Anytime we have a question, we like without thinking about it, we just ask it, right? Because it's in the forefront of our mind. So when it's being reduced, especially in a DRL schedule, it's only natural to think about the frustrations that come along with not being able to speak what's on your mind. Especially when you go like cold turkey, right? So this kind of makes me think of if maybe spaced responding DRL might have been a better initial approach, at least to like solidify the rules of the acceptable types or like even number of questions that participants could ask, right? So for example, for spaced responding, an instructor or like a teacher and whoever it is could instruct a student to only like for example, raise your hand to ask a question once every certain amount of minutes. And once that's kind of like solidified that they have something to kind of go off of, then you could like move on to, like a full session. So it's kind of like when you go cold turkey in a sense of something that you've been doing pretty much your entire life, which is only, somewhat increased now. Um, if it's, once those sessions are done, what are the like effects going to be like? Are they going to be, are they going to think twice about like advocating for themselves because it doesn't fall into the number of questions they're allowed to ask in a day, things of
Understand.
that sort. So I would have liked to see even like theorized discussion of different types of treatment designs that could be used. I do think full session was effective, but it would have been nice to see their options as well, because when you're talking about something that's so common in everyone's lives, and like how many questions do we ask in a day? Like imagine being told you can only ask like this many questions in a day, like I'm sure that would make anyone go crazy, right? So yeah, I think it was like I would have liked to see another aspect of that as well, especially to give a little bit more perspective to kind of, be in their shoes and stuff.
Okay. Karina, then Caitlin, then Luna.
Okay. So for me, I think that this the treatment, I think it was effective, and the way it was implemented, it showed that it was really effective and that it got the job done. I also think that the note card system that they had in this, I think that was like that was nice in a way that it was simple and it was like kind of easy to follow. I also think that that made there be clear contingencies and it made it more easier for the staff to kind of implement and follow and put that in. And so I don't know, I liked that. And I think that in the article it showed to be effective. So I thought that was nice.
Okay. Caitlin, and then Luna, and then Eureka.
Like I agreeing with what Karina and Danya said, I do think it was effective. Like it was successful in reduce like excessive question asking, but it's still allowing to like participants to like engage in communication. But like actually I think it is well structured as well because it reinforced like asking fewer questions and rather like punishing like excessive questions in a sense. But a concern that like I found specifically in this was like would the effects like remain over time without continued reinforcement? That's the thing because the study didn't really explore. I found that if participants generalize the skill to like other settings or whether they would like revert back to the like just excessive like question asking even if the reinforcement was removed because it like it's kind of like a fading procedure that could be like beneficial to promote long-term behavior change more than anything, if that makes any sense.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Um, I thought it was appropriate and effective, and I thought it allowed the observer to track the progress and the interventions, and that it could be used in other fragments or other spaces in terms of um, you know, on a wider scale for work environments, but I do understand, I do get what you're saying in terms of, would the skills be maintained and what would have been the effects of the skills that were maintained? Luna and Yurida?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everybody was saying, how like it was very effective in reducing uh the amount of questions in that situation. I think using like the reversal design was really good in showing that as well, how going back to the baseline, it definitely decreased. Um, and I think it the just the structure of the design was also really solid and like easy to replicate. Like they were able to replicate because this was based on the Austin and Bevan
Right.
uh study beforehand. And I think they replicated that really well. And then using that solid foundation, I think with like further research, you could definitely implement more things to test like the maintenance and the generalization and stuff like that. So overall, I think it's like a good, like solid starting ground. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more you can do with it and expand on it as well to get that generalization and stuff.
Agreed, agreed. Yurida?
For me, I think overall the study like it proved the effectiveness of the DRL. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to reduce the amount of questions asked, and they did it. But on the other hand, I don't know, like it kind of makes me think about the importance of reducing the questions because I think one part of the study they said like even though they reduced the amount of questions they actually were not able to prove that they were on task during that amount of time. So like if there was not like a very clear correlation. Like they were not asking questions, and therefore they were like working. So they assumed that, but there is not like a real proof because that was not part of
That was
the
not part of what they were looking for,
yeah,
in terms
exactly.
of productivity. Right.
So I think it was effective on that, but I think like in real life it makes me think like I think it should like other variables should actually be taken into consideration to know that something is like being um useful for the person, I would say.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna go on to the group activity, and this we're just finding the suitable answers on the left side to pin with the questions on the right side. So the first question says, the DRL procedure that was done at the adult day training centers were with a blank participant at each location. Anyone has the answer? Yes, Luna?
Let's say A. Oh no, not A. Oh my God, B. Sorry.
Oh,
B.
okay. Okay, and so we go on to number 2. Blank was the research design that was used in the intervention. Eureka.
I would say D, ABAB design.
Yes, you're correct. And 3, a measurement of the degree to which 2 or more observers report the same values when observing and collecting data for the same behaviors or events is known as? Karina?
C, inter-observer agreement.
Yeah, you guys are so brilliant. Okay, moving on to question 4. Identify a limitation of the study and discuss the impact it had on the intervention. And boy, you guys think somehow you guys have answered this question a few times. But hey, Dana, then Caitlin, then Karina, you can go ahead.
Yeah, and I think we've mentioned it like a
Right.
while. I think because I think we relate to this aspect of it. I think like even growing up, I was like one of those kids who like asked a lot of questions and was told to limit my questions. So I know like I guess like I relate to it on like a personal level too. But like a limitation that I think might be relevant is kind of I guess a lack of like functional analysis, right? Like they talked about function a little bit, but it wasn't very specified to the participants, you know, like why excessive questions were occurring, right? So if DRL is effectively reducing the behavior, if while DRL effectively reduced the behavior, the study did not like really touch on if it was maintained just by attention or if it was like social attention or access to information, some type of escape, right? I think because it's such a broad kind of subject, right? A question, yes, you can absolutely be asking questions for attention, right? But that might not necessarily be every single time you ask a question. You're not always looking for attention. Sometimes you genuinely, want to gain information. Right? So without identifying that function, the intervention may have, reduced the behavior without addressing like the underlying like motivations, right? So participants may have they could have like substituted a question asking with like other behaviors to kind of meet the same need, or some individuals may have experienced like more frustration or reduce like social interactions if their questions served an important function. For example, like gaining staff attention or even like gaining like knowledge, like just for the purpose of knowledge, or I guess like free speech, right? People want to be able to ask what they want to ask. So I think those are like a few of the limitations that I noticed, at least like if I were in that position, what would I have felt and what would I like kind of be thinking about in terms of like limitations. Sorry if that makes sense. My notes are not as clear.
That was clear. That was clear, Dana. Caitlin?
Okay.
So yeah, as like Jody you mentioned and like Danya mentioned, we did like kind of talk about this before, and like a limitation that like I think is also coming from like a person that like talks and asks questions a lot. Like, oh, 1 second, something showed up. No, like some from saying what I said before, it will cause behaviors for kids. Like it will cause them to feel frustrated. It'll cause them to maybe even have like an outburst being like, you like are not understanding what I'm trying to say. Like you're not listening to me, like in that kind of aspect of it. And another one that I mentioned as well, like they had like a very small like group of participants. It's not like a wide range of a lot of people that I found. Like some individuals, like if they use this more, would require different like reinforcement schedules or additional supports to ensure like it would work for them rather than like this just going on like the same thing. So I think if like they do this again at any time, they should have like larger groups with like a more diverse like group of participants to like test the strategy on just to see, or in like various settings to see like what would work for them and like how this would impact this situation and stuff like that.
Okay, Karina, I understand what you're saying, Caitlin, and I think I agree with you because I'm thinking, I was a little curious. I was curious. I was trying to, I was thinking, what would it be like if they were in a larger group setting, or if it was a
Yeah.
noisy setting,
Because
or
like you said and I said, like they don't really talk about it that much, right?
right.
And they don't really have a big like diverse like group in that sense either. So they only really know what it's going to be like for people with this certain like disability or intellectual like disability,
Mild,
yes. They
yeah.
don't really know what it's going to be like for everyone else.
Karina, then Luna.
So for me, I think a limitation that this study had and that wasn't really talked about too much was I noticed that there was a bit of like lack of information on the types of questions that were asked like to the people. So that was like one of my things that I like kind of wondered about, like what type of questions were they asking them about? Were they asking them about work? Were they asking them about school? Were they asking them about like their personal lives? Like I don't know, I found that kind of interesting, and I thought that definitely kind of limits this study in a way where it doesn't really explain what these questions are about or like what is being said. So I thought that would be one limitation.
Okay, thank you for that. Luna, then you Rita, and then I'm gonna. Oh, and Dana. Dana wants to go again.
Uh, so a limitation that I noticed, and I think they were also talking about it in the article as well, how they only observed one work period within both of them, right? So they mentioned there was 3 work periods for each of them, but they only observed one. So I'm thinking, yeah, they reduced questions in that one work period, but is it maybe because they're saving their questions for the other work periods when they're not being limited? So like maybe because they're limited on that one period, now the other periods are asking more questions because they noted that the reason they did that one period was because that's when they were asking the most questions, but now is that being transferred to other times of the day as well. So I think it would be beneficial to kind of look into that and maybe even just do like the whole work day instead of just like specific periods. Um, yeah, I
Oh,
thought that was
okay.
pretty limiting.
You Rita?
Yeah, I think that was very interesting what you just said, Luna, because I think it is very interesting to I feel like in the study they isolated like the whole situation like in just one moment, in just one period of the day, with just one person like working independently. Like they tried to reduce all the variables, but like being honest, there are so many variables that can actually influence the whole behavior. during the day, even the trainers that they could influence that. And so I think that that is very interesting what you just said, Luna. And I think that one of the limitations as well, just like Dania said at the beginning, is that they are not actually like teaching like another behavior. They are just reducing, and that's part of what I just said. Like they are just focusing on one thing. We're just gonna reduce this, but they are not actually trying to train them to do something instead, or trying to modify into something that might be more beneficial, generally speaking. So yeah, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, the purpose was definitely just to reduce and not to modify, change, or alter. So, with that in mind, I mean, we should keep that in mind. But what Luna said, I think, was very interesting as well. Because not necessarily not Luna, Eureka. There are other factors, biological, environmental factors that do affect how a person responds. And those things were not, well, we didn't have any insight on anything or um any variables that could have influenced the behaviors as well. Dana, your last comment?
Yeah, so I had a thought that I wanted to mention, but Luna said it so perfectly, and Yuridia did as well. But I was also just thinking about just now, Yuridia mentioned how the focus, of course, is reducing, the frequency of the behavior, but I just think about how lonely it can be. Like just from like a realistic point of view, like it can be really lonely to ask questions or to talk and to not hear a response, or to be ignored, or to not be kind of reinforced in any type of way. So not having like an alternative to like behavior or like anything to like fall back on, it can be extremely tough, especially for individuals with developmental disabilities, where they don't always understand what's wrong with, the amount of questions that they're asking, right? So kind of um I guess that does seem like a limitation in like my head, where um oh my God, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, it seems like a
Yeah,
limitation in your head because you're not someone, or I'm gonna assume you don't have a intellectual disability, and you're in a situation, you're in a class, you're in math class, and there are questions, you don't understand something, you want to be able to ask questions without
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
like,
So kind of like
you're something wrong.
reinforcing like the socially like appropriate um types of questions, or I don't know, going about it in a way where it caters to like individuals' needs.
They
It had so many different like variations of it, just like your idea said. But yeah,
they
I
didn't
thought that was like an interesting limitation.
They didn't include, but they did have examples of questions, and they did have examples and non-examples of questions though, which they
Yeah,
did
but
have,
examples
but
that are catered specifically to the individual,
to
right?
the
Yeah.
situation.
So
Yeah.
like, is this something, this individual would ask about, or like, is this something that this individual tends to talk about a lot more? Or maybe this specific topic that he's asking about or mentioning is holds some kind of importance to him. Things of like that
Still
nature, you know what I
control.
mean? Like kind of catering it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I
Was
was
still
trying to like
control.
get at. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, okay. I think we're running out of time. So considering generalizability, what other behaviors or settings would you recommend to use DRL interventions? And I see Luna, then Karina, Caitlin, then Dana, and then you read.
So the first thing I thought about where like else you could probably implement this would be like at home, like with parents and children. Like I know children a lot of the time are like constantly trying to get attention of the parents, asking for things. So I feel like this could definitely be something that can be implemented like in a home setting as well, or even like if they're like throwing tantrums or stuff like that. Like if they, yeah, like if they do it too much, or like you said, like like they did here, like set like 3 maximum, and then slowly like decrease that to like a acceptable level. Okay, maybe not tantrums because you probably want to get rid of that completely, but like, just asking for things or like stuff like that. If they're doing it too much, I feel like that could probably be something that can be implemented like at home.
Okay. Karina, then Caitlin.
I think for me, when it comes to generalizability, another setting that can be used is some kind of a classroom setting for them. I think that can be used and it can definitely help with reducing the excessive hand raising or calling out hand raising or other disruptive behaviors that they might have. And so I think in a classroom setting that could help. It'll be a different environment and it'll be something that potentially helps them. And I think it'll just be a different experience that can get them to um like that can get them to adapt to this new environment.
Okay, Caitlin, then Eureka.
I said in more of like a workplace setting, and like where employees might ask like the same questions repetitively to like supervisors or to like managers or coworkers or anything like that. You could use it in that kind of setting. And then I also said like maybe like therapy sessions because clients might like repeat to like I have it in my notes the way I said it. Clients might repeatedly ask like seek for validation in a sense. So I have it in that one as well. And yeah.
So guys, we hope we have 2 minutes to go. Eureka and Dana, could you just add quickly?
Well, I was thinking that the that the setting they applied it to, it's very it could be valuable to continue doing it like in a professional workplace setting. But I'm thinking more like in not just independent work, but actually with working as a group, like teamwork. I think that would be very useful to actually understand that each part of the team have opportunities to ask questions.
Okay, and Dana?
Yeah, so similar to Caitlin, I thought that I guess using DRL for like self-regulation strategies, right? So people with for example, like even someone with anxiety who needs like repetitive like reassurance, using a DRL could shape more like balanced like self-regulation techniques. Another thing I thought of, which was so funny because it was the first thing you mentioned, Jodi, when you started your presentation, was hand raising, right? So frequent hand raising in like educational settings, especially for like kids in a classroom, raise their hand like every like minute or every few minutes. So how to like we reduce that, but still promote that they should raise their hands and they should ask questions, maybe to not to that extent. So I think the hand raising is what I've seen happen, even like at my placement in like real time. But like even on like on an anxiety level or something that helps, I guess, like self-regulation. I think that could be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dana. I like that personal self-regulation aspect of it. I think it would work well for that. And I'm gonna head on into our final question.
Oh, Jodi, I don't know if you'll have time for it.
Okay. So the final question,
Question
guys.
6. So I think that's a substantial discussion. I'm gonna start in a couple minutes, so maybe you'll want to come back.
Okay, we're gonna head over in a few seconds. Okay, guys, so we don't have time for discussion question 6. However, if you check your emails later, you will see your results and you will see if you were able to get that Tim Hortons gift card. Okay, guys. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for being a part of our discussion. Thank you for
Thank
your
you so much.
questions and your points. I have really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
You did
much.
so
Jane.
great.
Good
You did
job.
really good.
Stop recording. Should I just stop recording? Just stop?
Yeah, just stop recording. And then, like I said, when Kelly ends the entire meeting, you're